Hey everybody, for today's Q&A, I've compiled a bunch of comments and questions from you guys revolving around one topic, and that's proven winner plants. And it basically comes down to, are they worth the extra money? So I'm gonna go through kind of the commentaries that you guys have made, some of the questions you've asked, and then I'll kind of give my input, maybe give you a little insight into what it's like from a grower retailer standpoint, and just kind of sum it up maybe in the end. And I'm gonna do this all based on your questions. So the first one comes from Angie, and her comment is, 4-inch pots for proven winners in my region vary depending on where you shop. We have one local place that charges $4.99, another that charges $5.50 if you buy 10, big box stores are $5.99, and a franchise flower tent is $8. She also adds, I only buy proven winners for a majority of my plants because I know they are reliable and I know what to expect. And this is an important point because a lot of people don't realize that plant prices are quite regional. So depending on what part of the country you're in, they can vary a lot. But even within one area, there can be quite a range. And immediately a lot of people go to, oh, it's all greed. That one's greedier than the other because they charge more. And that can be the case, but usually you also have to consider how they get their plants and what kind of inputs go into it. So someone who's getting finished product like a big box store, they're paying maybe a little different price point than somebody who's growing their own and getting little tiny plants and growing them onward. Also depends on the location. So depending on their location, there may be higher freight charges. Also, farther north you go, the higher the heat bill is to be able to grow those plants and have them ready for you when you want to have them for your yard. So all things to consider, but it is important to realize that shopping around you can find different things. Also, sometimes places that have a wider range of choices, so they might have, you know, the whole proven winners lineup of super tunias, we'll say, they might have to charge a little bit more because they're oftentimes buying smaller quantities of one color or one variety, and that can be sometimes a little pricier, whereas places that are only carrying like 3 varieties, they can bulk up on them, sometimes negotiate a better price. Kind of all varies. There's a lot of factors that go into that, but before you go right into the greed factor on the retailer side of it, that's not always the case, so keep that in mind. Next comment comes from Carmen Kuhn, and she writes, I had to stop buying annual proven winners. They are too expensive in our area. I'll still buy their perennials. That's an important point as well. Proven winners is not just annuals. A lot of people know them for their super tunias, their super bells, their super bina, and some of their other plants. Other people only know them for their color choice shrubs, like their hydrangeas and their weigelas and their spirea and all those kind of plants. And then other people only know them for their perennials. And so there's 3 distinct categories of proven winner plants, and different retailers will sell different ones. Some of them sell all 3 of that kind of grouping. Others will only specialize in one or the other. And so that's important to know. And those are also coming from different sources. So Proven Winners really is kind of a marketing umbrella of several different companies that are providing these different services or these different offerings. And they also have one for houseplants and one for caladiums as well. So it's a very, it's a big tent with a lot of different groups underneath that. So another thing to consider, because as a retailer, we have to get them from different sources. So it's not like there's one big proven winner store and we just order it all from there and it comes in and it works that way. We are getting from different places. Now, if there is one thing that I've learned from my YouTube audience, is that people really go across the whole spectrum as far as their feelings about proven winners, from the proven winner super fans down to the proven winner haters. So they're all out there. I realize everybody has different reasons for their feelings about the plants. Some of it is based on experience. Some of them just don't approve of the price that they do. And then, like, here's a comment from Terry D. And Terry D writes, she's talking about a video that I had done about growing plants, and she said, sure, a different perspective into the flower growing, selling, marketing business. Proven winners are very good at marketing. And I think that's the thing you have to really realize. The reason why people feel so strongly about it is because Proven Winners' name is out there all the time. They're probably one of the biggest marketing arms for the plant industry. That's one of the brands that people know by name. They're not the only one out there, actually, and we're starting to see more and more emerge. I'm thinking specifically like the Worry Free line, and there's one that's all natives. I think they're called American Beauties. And then there's also, you know, you have things like the Star Roses, the Knockout Roses. So these are all branded varieties of plants. And you'll notice they have the different colors of pots and they have logos on them and that type of thing. And all of that kind of marketing does end up costing a little bit more, but it also does make people more aware of the plants, some of the benefits of those specific plants, and also, I guess, introduces a lot of consumers to plants that they may not have otherwise known about, and wouldn't be able to solve some of the problems that they have without knowing that. That said, with all that marketing, that extra cost does get kind of added on to those plants to be able to cover all that. So I understand why people get a little frustrated, especially because the Proven Winner's name is always out there. And that comes to some of the people who are not real happy with Proven Winner plants. Like this one is Super Woody Boy, and he writes, Proven Winners. Oops, there's a siren in the background. I am in Kentucky right now, and I'm in a parking lot. So forgive any extra sounds that you hear, but I want to get a video out for you guys. So I'm doing it wherever I am. Super Woody Boy writes, Proven Winners want your money. Crazy crap. All their plants are overpriced. Not a fan. And so you can see it really depends also on what kind of other plants you have experience with, because I think a lot of people, based on Super Woody Boy's previous comments on other things, he's been growing a lot of different plants and has had really good success with other plants. So if you're happy with the plants that you're growing, don't feel that peer pressure to start growing a Proven Winners plant or anything like that. Stick to what works for you and what you're happy with. I totally support that. And if you've never tried a Proven Winner plant, it might be something you want to just see, is there really a difference? But it's not, you're not on the outs if you're not growing Proven Winner plants. Proven Winner people love plants just as much as you do. So it's one of those things I just want you to keep in mind. Like, it's not a club, folks. We all love the plants and we love growing. So keep that in mind. And then another one comes from Bonnie Hineker. Proven Winners are proven losers in Zone 3. So Zone 3, that's pretty cold too. So obviously Bonnie has had some not as much luck with their plants, and I'm not sure if it has to do with the zones. I'm guessing that if they're talking about that she's talking about, of course, perennials and shrubs, and usually the Proven Winner tags are pretty good about what zone they're in, but with any plant, when you're getting to the borders of those zones, whether it's the bottom of the zone or the top of the zone, you're always at risk, and Zone 3 can be a pretty cold area to be in. So Bonnie, I'm sorry you had trouble with some of those Proven Winner plants, and I have a feeling that in Zone 3, you guys really get to know which plants can handle that cold winter and be able to really come through for you. So clearly they didn't work for her. And then another one, Randy Bailey. Some of the Proven Winners stuff is never available anywhere. And that's an important point as well, because Proven Winners has, I think, a strong stronghold in like the upper East Coast and across the Midwest. And it's just starting to be more available in like California, and they've been really working a lot on having more heat tolerant and humidity tolerant plants so that they can, I think, move more into the southern states as well. And previously they weren't as strong in that area, so they're working on that part of it. So you're probably going to be seeing more and more of those Proven Winner plants as time goes on. But that is one frustration that people have. Also, that sometimes the exact color or variety that they want isn't available, and that can be really frustrating. And you can order a lot of these plants online, but it is very expensive to buy them online. I rarely see the prices online being less than what I'd see at any retailer. And online, there's all the shipping costs and the processing of those plants, because shipping plants is a really expensive process, because they have to be handled and packaged so perfectly in order for them to get to you. And then I have gotten a lot of comments where people said, yeah, I gotten some Proven Winner plants in the mail, and they were really beat up, or they were in bad shape when I got them. I've ordered a lot of plants, or a couple plants, from Proven Winners direct, and they've come in really good shape. They looked rough when I opened them, but they bounced back pretty quick. So I did a video where I showed you how rough they were, and I probably didn't do them justice in that video, because at the end I was like, oh, these are probably not going to do well. Every single plant ended up doing just fine, so that's a good thing. Let's see. Dominique Cook writes, where can you find the newer varieties? My local shops usually only carry Proven Winners. And that's from a video that I was talking about other plants. And that's the other end of the spectrum, is that there are some retailers that really focus on Proven Winners, and they may not carry other like petunias, or they may not carry other shrubs. And so if you're looking for some of the other varieties that I talk about in videos, because I definitely talk about both Proven Winners and non-Proven Winner varieties. I don't work for Proven Winners. I don't get a kickback. I don't get free plants from them. So I'm not on the Proven Winners payroll at all. Let's see. The other question, here's one from NW. So are all these suggestions Proven Winners? I avoid Proven Winners because they are more expensive. And a lot of times when I'm talking about plants, people do get a little confused, where they're like, wait, are you only talking about Proven Winners? I think people are used to Proven Winners being on YouTube and different YouTubers talking about them, so they kind of get a little disjointed or just confused when I start talking about non-proven winter plants. Okay, so those were some of the negatives on it, and really it does, I think, seemingly come down to price. Some people have had issue with performance. I'm going to go into some of the positive things that people have said. So Stylinjo, I'm not sure how to say that one. So they write, couldn't agree with you more. Thought the proven winners had gone up a little too high at my garden center, so I bought the cheaper 4-pack of petunias. Well, I'm going back to proven winners. Can't wait for next spring. And you know, that happens a lot of times too, where if you don't know what alternatives to buy to the proven winner plants, you might end up with some very small plants or plants that don't flower as much, because in general, proven winner plants are bred to perform, you know, especially annuals. They really do tend to flower a lot. So that's an important thing to kind of consider if you're going to switch out. Make sure you know what variety maybe is going to perform similarly, because there are varieties that compete with proven winners. And so, you know, finding out what those are, you can find some alternatives, and sometimes they're cheaper. But I will say this, a lot of times there are places where proven winner plants really aren't any different in price than other ones. Now, you may find that there's a big difference in your area, but I've been to nurseries, and usually they're ones that would be kind of boutique-like. They kind of have these nice wide aisles and these beautiful plants, and they have a little coffee shop and all that kind of stuff. And when I go there, their proven winner prices are the same as their regular plants. So it's kind of interesting when I go to those places. And then I'll go to someplace else and proven winner plants might be $2 more for an annual. And that kind of surprises me too, because that's a big price jump for a similar plant. So anyway, let's go to what Peggy Ann writes. Yes, proven winners are a bit more money, but I trust the product and have never been disappointed. And so this is, you know, what a lot of people will say, like, hey, at least I know a proven winner plant, at least in my yard, has done very well, so I'm going to trust the other varieties that they put out there. So that's an important thing. Joanne Nagel writes, I do love proven winners. They are tried and true, but short of becoming a PW snob, I appreciate the info on the other plants to combine and or replace when I can't find the plants I like. And you know, that's kind of how it is for me too. Like, I do trust the proven winner plants for the most part. That's just my experience, both as a grower and someone who has their own plants in their garden. I grow a lot of the annuals. I grow a good amount of the shrubs, and then some of the perennials. I don't have a lot of perennials in my yard at this point. I'm working on that. That's kind of my next kind of area that I'm working on. So that's an important point to make. And then Wheaties writes, yep, proven winners is expensive, but I buy less and have better looking flowers for the season, so they're worth it. And that's another thing that, especially when you're looking at the annuals, the varieties that they put out there tend to be more vigorous. So they're bigger plants and they tend to cover a lot more area. They are usually very consistent and good about flowering as well. So that's an important thing to consider with annuals. Now with their perennials and with their shrubs, sometimes it's the opposite. They have a more compact variety because in the landscape, sometimes you don't want these plants that get a little bit out of control. You don't want to have to do extra trimming or anything like that. So that's the flip side sometimes. And now some of their varieties are more vigorous or bigger than some of the others. And that's something that proven winners tends to do, especially I'd say in the last 10 years. Prior to that, I felt like sometimes they were just filling out their catalog. So their varieties were decent, but maybe quite similar to other ones on the market. Now I've noticed any variety that they're bringing to market tends to have a characteristic that is either solving a problem that other varieties aren't able to solve or aren't able to address, or they have a different color, or they have some kind of characteristic that makes them an improvement on an earlier variety. So you're really seeing that more and more as their new varieties come out. They're replacing some of those older ones. So I am seeing that happening quite a bit. So as these new varieties are coming out, you know, you can kind of be a little bit more confident. I think that if you have the problem that plant is supposed to address, this plant might be a better option for you. D Power writes, I used to buy the cheap packs of petunias and never really liked how they looked. I started planting proven winners Super Petunias 2 years ago and will be planting them from now on. Yes, they are more money per plant, but the amount of growth and longevity they have makes them worth so much more to me. And that's another one. And then another comment from Sunny Idaho. Fred Meyer is selling proven winners 4-inch annuals for $3.99, so you can buy the best for a great price. That happens every once in a while where there's a great sale going on proven winner plants. The only thing I notice is a lot of times when they're having at a lower price, the choices might be a little limited. So that's always a little frustrating. This last spring, I did a lot of videos where I was showing you Proven Winner recipes, but I was also showing you some alternative plants that you could put in there. And it seems like a lot of you really appreciated that I was giving you kind of some other options. So for example, Sandy Christensen writes, I love how you do not have all proven winners. They are great plants, but out of my budget. I can now look for substitutes and just know that they won't be as full or as large. And that's the case with certain ones that I was talking about in a lot of these. And so I do try to talk to you about what some of the other varieties out there, sorry, there's some loud construction going on behind me, but I'm gonna keep going. So yes, I like to talk about alternatives, especially when it comes to annuals, because there are some really good alternatives out there. And again, Proven Winner plants aren't always available where you are. So I want to make sure that at least you know what to look for when you're shopping for those other ones. Picky Mickey writes, because of their practices, I don't trust Proven Winners or the people that push them so hard. Their tactics are so wasteful and not good at all in this economy. So I'm not exactly sure what practices they're specifically referring to. I'm guessing it might be the marketing. However, there may be more to it. I will say that when it comes to practices, Proven Winners has been pretty good about, for example, like 4-Star Nursery really focuses on addressing pests with biologicals instead of using so many pesticides. They also have introduced the EcoPot, the one that you can put in the compost or you can just leave it in the ground. So they have been leaders in some of those areas, but again, with their higher prices, I think a lot of other plant companies have followed suit and raised prices. So Proven Winners may be a leader in kind of that increase in price that we're seeing as well. So I think that does frustrate people as well. Just some thoughts on that. Now, it is very common for people to ask me questions like, are these plants that you're talking about all Proven Winners? And I tend to talk about Proven Winner plants and non-Proven Winner plants, and I don't always say this is a Proven Winners, this is not. I basically talk about plants that I like or that I've had good success with, or plants that I think are good options. If you need to know for sure, like, is this a Proven Winner plant or not? I usually try to put the name of the plant at the bottom. You can always go to the Proven Winners website, put it in their search bar, and it will show up if it is one of their plants. Or you can put in the type of plant. So for example, if it is, an arborvitae, you can put arborvitae into their search and then you'll see all their arborvitae and you can look specifically for the one that I mentioned. But like Evan Hayes writes, are all these petunias Proven Winners? I'm confused about which is which and what is what. With Proven Winners, they tend to give their different varieties like a category name. So like all of their petunias are supertunias, and they have the Magic Show line of salvias for their perennials. I know like with phlox, they have a couple different lines. So one's like Luminary, one is, I can't remember all the names of them, but they have maybe a couple ones, and the different varieties or the different category names mean that this whole grouping is similar, just different colors maybe of the same plant. So some might be all dwarf and all the other ones might be all tall, that kind of thing. So they're pretty good about their naming, but again, if I don't say this is a Proven Winners plant, it can be hard for people who aren't as familiar with Proven Winner plants. So I'm trying to think, should I start saying Proven Winners? And I think recipes I'll end up saying Proven Winners 100 times in some of the videos. So we'll see. Now, when I was talking about annuals earlier in the season, I talked a lot about overplanting and how the Proven Winner recipes really do fill like a 12-inch pot full of plants, probably more than you need. And there's been a lot of positive feedback from you guys about that. So Kelly Foreman writes, the Proven Winners recipes are crazy with the number of plants they call for. And I just want to remind people that a lot of times their Proven Winner plants are really designed so that they look good, like right away or within 3 weeks, you're going to have this nice full thing. If you need your containers to look good from June all the way to end of September, well, putting that many plants in, it's going to be really hard to keep them watered. They're going to be competing for all the nutrients, so it can be a lot more work. So I've been trying to kind of educate people on, you can pull back. And I had talked about a study at Mast Young, or a little demonstration that they had done on plants per pot. And I'm going to do another video on it because they just published their results of, when they put 3 plants in versus 4 plants versus 5 plants. And it's really interesting. And they have some conclusions that they drew. So I'll save that for another video. Meanwhile, Grand Marie writes, PW pushes plants loads because they sell them. Gardeners overplant because they want nearly instant gratification. Instead of calling it overplanting, they refer to it as abundance. Laugh out loud. I do use tons of their plants, but never overplant. Zone 9A is has a very long growing season, so I'm good. This is what gardening is, waiting. And that's a good point, because I think it's tough, because I think a lot of people have gotten used to going in and seeing, these big full containers at garden centers, and then they end up paying a big chunk of money for those. Or if they plant their own, they're just not thinking ahead. They're thinking about what it's going to look like this weekend. And so I talk about this in my videos in the spring, so I won't go too heavy into this, but I'm from that school of thought, like, let's enjoy these for a longer period of time and really get the best out of them and enjoy how they change over the season, rather than loving them when they're perfect and then they start to struggle a little bit earlier than they should because we're overplanting. Let's see. And then there's another one from Holly Leach. We needed this video. Proven Winners wants you to buy more plants. The plants are good, mind you, but they way overplant. Thanks again. And that's again on the same topic. And yes, I think Proven Winners does want to make sure that you're buying enough plants, but they also want to make sure that they're creating an impressive display, so that you're going like, hey, my containers look better than everybody else's, and their recipes do that, and they do that very quickly. And so I think that then encourages, or it kind of has a domino effect, where people ask those people, hey, where'd you get your plants? What kind of plants are those? So there is, kind of a long tail to that. Unfortunately, those containers sometimes don't make it all the way through the end of the season because of that. Here's another one from Fizzy Pop. This was so helpful. I listened to a very popular garden channel that uses Proven Winners and was taught to pack as many plants into a container as I could, but this is so much more sensible. Thank you for the encouragement to pull back by half, because I know I'll get much healthier, happier plants doing this method. And I always say you can either pull the number of plants back or increase the pot size. So if instead of doing a 12-inch, do an 18-inch or 16-inch, and you're gonna, it's gonna be a lot easier on you, and it's gonna look a lot better. And that's, I think an important thing, on YouTube, a lot of times, in order for our things that we plant to really look good right away, we do have to stuff them full, because otherwise we have to be much more disciplined, I think, in our videos, where it's like, I'm going to record myself planting it, and then I have to make sure and record something later on of the finished product. And a lot of times it's better to have them all in one video, because the chances of someone watching that one video and then a month later or 2 months later watching my next one, I never know if that's going to happen. So that's part of the reason why I think a lot of content creators, we do want those instant results, because we want to show you, we're excited to show you really beautiful stuff. Dark Quark writes, same. Some of them pack like 8 plants into pots, but just one potted on the ground gets so big that why would you put extra for extra money? So that's another thing. Another person here, Jordan, writes, I mentally take every Proven Winners recipe and have it. They do look very nice, but they account for right now making it showy, a showy container for an event, and then getting rid of them a couple weeks later, or replanting them with a new group of things. I would much rather have a kind of skimpy looking show in May and June, she's also in Michigan, and a much better container from July onward that can stay in a relatively smaller container. So I think this supports kind of what I've been saying. So I maybe you guys were already on board before you watched my videos, but hey, I appreciate that people agree with me on this one, because I don't know, this is how I garden, and I just think it works better for me, and I find it a little bit more satisfying. If I want to have instant gratification, I'll go for cut flowers, I'll go for flower arranging instead of containers that are going to have a short lifespan. So now I'm going to switch gears, and I'm going to start with a question from Lori Brown, and she writes, I really appreciate seeing other plant options and learning about them. Sometimes I feel YouTube is owned by Proven Winners, and while they are great, they are not the only good thing available. Thank you. And Kelly Foreman writes, it's nice to watch someone who is knowledgeable about Proven Winner plants, but not sponsored by them. I want to learn about other varieties too. Kristen Stevens writes, I sure hope Proven Winners marketing team is watching this. I am really glad that you are not paid by Proven Winners. Your videos do not feel like Proven Winners infomercials. And Picky Mickey writes, thank you for posting something that makes sense. I'm so tired of these Proven Winner shills making people think they need to overpot their arrangements. I started watching one the other day where this lady tried stuffing at least 12 plants in an 8x12 bowl. I have a 15-foot bed in front of my house. I use 7 Supertunias in the front row, and that's it. It fills beautifully. And so I want to address why maybe sometimes people feel like Proven Winners is, or that YouTube is owned by Proven Winners, or that it's just like people are only talking about Proven Winners, and there's a couple reasons for that. So first of all, Proven Winners is producing their own content, but you can always spot that. They will have the logo in there or something like that. I will say that I am a huge fan of a Proven Winners produced podcast. They're on YouTube. It's called the Gardening Simplified podcast. Look for it on YouTube. It's a really great resource because they not only talk about Proven Winner plants, they will address concerns that people have about other varieties as well. So they're not, married to just Proven Winners. A lot of the information that they provide applies to non-Proven Winner plants as well. So I think if you want to feel a little smarter, watch that podcast. It's mainly about shrubs. So you'll find that's a good resource to go to. But also Proven Winners does partner with some content creators. So I think on their marketing packet, they say they have like 20 to 24 content creators in the US and Canada that they partner with. And so those people, I'm not sure what their relationship is. There may be some that get paid for some of their content, or they get paid for Proven Winners to use some of their content in some of their marketing. But I think moreover, they probably provide them with plants and preview plants and that type of thing. I think they also invite them to different events and things like that, bring them in to, they see their research and development and their gardens and their trial gardens. So they might pay for trips and things like that. I'm not sure. I don't know what their relationship is, but so there are some content creators that are doing stuff with Proven Winners. And there seems to be kind of a chain reaction that happens from that because a lot of these non-partner people, will see these other people producing these videos and they do the same. And I mean, it's why they call people influencers, because like I watch a lot of videos and I find myself kind of mirroring what sometimes they're doing because I saw it work for them. So like putting cardboard down as a weed barrier is something that I've seen other YouTubers do. So I did it as well. So there's a little bit of that. I think there might be some content creators who are also maybe hoping Proven Winners will notice them and partner with them in the future. So they do everything about Proven Winners to do that. So that creates a little bit of an echo chamber of Proven Winners stuff. But probably the biggest reason why you might be feeling that way has to do with what they call the algorithm. So once you watch a video, it doesn't matter if you like it or if you subscribe to their channel. If you watched a high percentage of that video, suddenly YouTube goes, hey, they really like that. And that video was about Proven Winner plants. Here's another one about Proven Winners. I'm going to show them another one and another one and another one. When it comes to liking and subscribing, that's your way of controlling what you want to see more of. So if you tell YouTube, I want to see more of this, or I really like this, or I want to subscribe, it does it. But a lot of what you're seeing on YouTube isn't really based on your subscriptions and your likes. It's oftentimes just based on what you're watching. So, YouTube is keeping track of that in their algorithm. They're not tracking you per se, but they're looking at that and then they're recommending content from that. So if you're feeling like, oh, there's so much Proven Winner stuff, I'd recommend find some videos about non-Proven Winner stuff, like them or watch them to the end, and you'll find that your feed might start changing where you're going to get more variety. And maybe it means you're going to put in a different brand, or you're going to just put in a specific variety and then scroll through and find videos that don't have Proven Winner plants in them. It's just something you do, but realize that a lot of times the information that you're learning about Proven Winner plants applies to other varieties. So if we're talking about a salvia that's perennial, a lot of times, when they're talking about planting it and taking care of it, that applies to other things. So just realize that. And I will say Proven Winners does a lot of like training for retailers and growers. So they put out a lot of content, and a lot of times, we mirror that content because, hey, I just learned something new and I want to pass it on to you. If I learned it from Proven Winners, a lot of times it kind of keeps going through. And so a lot of these educational programs, both in the content and in just other resources that they provide to growers and retailers, just makes them an easy one to talk about. So that's where I'm at with that one there. I'm going to finish up with something from Patty Day. And Patty writes, I just got some petunias and calibrachoas that I think were Proven Winners, but they pulled the plant identifiers out as I was checking out. So I'm not sure. I got to be honest, there's a bit of a red flag in this for me, because one thing that Proven Winners does require from its growers and its retailers is that every plant is grown and sold in one of the Proven Winners white pots and has a Proven Winners official tag with it. And the reason for that is partly marketing. They want to be consistent across their entire brand, and no matter where that plant is sold, it's going to look the same, or it's going to have the same packaging. So that's a requirement that they have. Some people don't like it. A lot of growers got really frustrated when they started mandating it with their annuals several years ago. But ultimately, is part of the marketing program, and I think it does help sell some of the Proven Winner plants in some cases. So that's important, but also those plant tags is how we as growers and retailers, that's how we pay the licensing fee for the plant. So Proven Winners is known for paying the plant developers and plant breeders for their new plants. So they will sometimes get an exclusive deal where they're going to say, hey, we want to be the only person who can sell this particular variety, or they have maybe a non-exclusive one where they're selling it, but maybe some other places are able to sell it either under the same or under a different name. It kind of varies depending on the situation, but ultimately those plant breeders are making money off of every single plant that's sold. And the thinking behind that is that's going to basically feed them so that they can produce more innovative plants, or more plants that will, they'll be able to put onto the market in the future. Whereas if we were skipping that step of it, the people who did all the work to develop the plants sometimes, don't make any money, and it takes a lot of effort to be able to get a new plant, especially to get it from development to market. So Proven Winners is kind of a launch pad for a lot of these plants to be able to get onto market as well. So something to just consider. Now there's a couple things that could have happened, like maybe they didn't get one of their packs of tags, so they want to be able to put them onto their plants. It just seems a little not above bar, and I don't want to accuse your particular nursery of not following the rules, but when we get our plants in, like when we get our plugs in, before we open the box, there's a big sticker on there that says, like, you can't propagate these, you have to make sure, there are all those rules, and when we open those, we're agreeing to those terms. And I have been in a lot of places that I know that they're probably not keeping to the rules, meaning that they're selling Proven Winner plants in black pots. Sometimes I've even seen where they just have a sign up and says Supertunias, and there's colors in there that are not Supertunia colors. So they're basically, siphoning off of the Proven Winner's name, and that is illegal, and they could get in some trouble for that. I'm not sure how the Proven Winner police work, but it's just not above board. And so, we don't do that. We kind of figure we do get some benefits from Proven Winners, both in training, in marketing, and in quality of plants. So, we follow those rules, but there are some growers and retailers out there that aren't. Just realize that if there isn't a Proven Winners tag in there, you might not actually be getting a Proven Winners plant, or if you are, it might not be legally propagated, or you might just have a rogue retailer who's like, I'm going to grow Proven Winners, but I'm not putting them in those white pots. I'm not paying extra for those pots, because the tags in the pots are more expensive usually than some of the other varieties that we've can grow. So that's part of the reason why people are doing it. It has to do with money. So just wanted to make you aware of that. So ultimately, are Proven Winners worth it? I've had very good luck with Proven Winner plants, and this includes both annuals, perennials, and shrubs. So I would say, let's say if you're someone who you're just not sure of the varieties, you don't have a network of people who can recommend plants to you, chances are going with a Proven Winner plants is going to be a good option for you, because okay, this is going to be probably one of the better performing varieties for that type of plant. Just make sure that you're paying attention to your zone or to the application, so that you're putting it in the right type of sunlight, and that it has all that extra kind of information, that it all ties together that way, and you should have good luck. Meanwhile, if you're used to having varieties that have done well for you in the past, or you have a friend or someone else who's doing really well, sorry, there's a truck pulling out right now, and they've done really well for you in the past, hey, I say keep going with that. And if you want to try a couple Proven Winner plants, add them in and see how they do. And just realize too that if you're buying like the really cheap, inexpensive plants, they may not perform quite the way that you want them to. So that's all I have. Hopefully this gives you some insight into Proven Winners and the quality of their plants, and when maybe you want to stick with them and when you don't. And hey, I'm okay with you guys not growing Proven Winner plants. I just want you guys to be successful in whatever you're growing. So keep up the good work, and hey, we're coming to the end of the season, so it's time to start getting some of that fall yard work done. So when I get back to Posen, that's what I'm going to be doing. Otherwise, hey, I'll see you guys next time.